All right, so we're back.
Great to see you, Naiyya.
Hi.
Just to give you a format of the show, and we've talked about it, the idea here again is not really an interview. We want to understand the motivation behind why Naiyya became an entrepreneur, right? The journey, all those things that the media doesn't know about. And let's talk about all of those things that makes Naiyya Naiyya, right? And the powerhouse that she is. Because and we've done a bit of research, we've gone behind the scenes a little bit, found things that people may not have picked up and it could be very interesting to talk about. So are you ready? And as you know that there's a rapid
Yes.
fire at the end. I think most people are like, oh, they try to elongate their talk as much as possible to reduce the rapid fire part of it, but it's fun, right? So what's going on? Let's talk. Let's talk. What's going on with Baby Chakra? You guys have been virtual now for the last 4 months. What's happening?
I mean, lots, AD. I think you kind of have a flavor of what's happening because you've been pretty much part of the journey from the very beginning. And I think I've done a decent job of keeping all of you up to date with what's happening. But it's obviously like it's a difficult time for all of us. We're in the midst of a global pandemic, right? I mean, so it's a difficult time. I think it's been a time which has helped us define resilience and sort of really prioritize what is really important in our personal lives and our professional lives. I think it's cut out a lot of the clutter, a lot of the noise, right? So I think overall it's been, I think, a very formative time for me personally, but also professionally in so many ways. I think it's also been an extremely exciting time. And I want to sort of keep in context that we are in the midst of a global pandemic, but I do think that some of the positive accelerations we see today is because we are in the midst of a global pandemic, right? So I think the conversations moving to healthcare, the digital acceleration of solutions, sort of the reach that we are seeing in terms of, actually families accessing us, finding us actually a very important part of their journeys today, or doctors working with us and finding us, I think, quite an invaluable part of their journeys today as healthcare providers. I think this
I believe you
acceleration
guys
is
have
all
like
been thanks to people.
6,000 doctors on the platform, right?
Yeah, we have a lot of doctors, and I think that journey itself has been quite an exciting one, quite a formative one for us as well. And I think one that it began quite, I had a background in healthcare. At McKinsey, I was working in the healthcare practice. It has been an area of deep interest, but also like, I think that I know that area, I understand that area. I've been passionate about that area. And I think the whole idea behind Baby Chakra, which was to create a companion for care for parents through pregnancy and childcare. I mean, the doctor is a very integral part of that ecosystem, right? So I think it's very
So
exciting to
true.
sort of see the doctor become part of it and at the scale that we see today.
I also think, I mean, and before we get into our flow, but I also think the entire way where the patients interact with a doctor is undergoing such a massive change,
Yeah.
right? Like this whole telemedicine thing, even as a VC, whenever someone would pitch me telemedicine about maybe 10 months ago, I would be like, honestly, I think telemedicine for Indians is about 10 years away, right? And we're still somebody who needs that touch and feel from our doctor. We want to see him, we want to meet him, even if I have the flu, right? So I never could imagine that in such a short span of time, we would suddenly go from, this touch and feel kind of a society or touch and feel kind of thing to saying, you know what, we're okay with talking to our doctor virtually. I think, because you're a virtual platform, there is such a great opportunity for you to start making that connect, especially for mothers, right? Because it's, first time mothers or first time parents, dealing with a pregnancy, dealing with the changes that the body is going through, and then not being able to see a doctor, you really need a trusted partner in between. I think Baby
Yeah.
Chakra does that, right?
Yeah.
So let's get into the flow. I know we can just talk about this for the next 45 minutes, but Baby Chakra, honestly, there's a lot of investments, 85 plus, obviously, and a lot of them have done very well, and there's amazing stories everywhere. But I think one of the startups that whenever I talk about it, it is always someone who's heard about it, right? It's very rare to be in a room where someone doesn't know what Baby Chakra is. And what really got me excited is that over the last 24 months, I've met so many men that talk about the daily email that they get through the pregnancy, right? And it just tells you the kind of impact, this kind of a startup has, right? And this kind of a venture has. And since you've logged in from the Baby Chakra ID, I don't even know how many people at Baby Chakra know that this entire show, this entire thing called Baby Chakra is run by a single female founder, right? So very rare in the Indian ecosystem to have a single founder, and that single founder also be a female. That's like the rarest of the rarest, right? So tell me a little bit, Naiyya, about yourself. I know you grew up in Kolkata, right? And what happened? Like, how did you land up at, as this founder and CEO of Baby Chakra?
I mean, Eri, that would be a completely different, like a very, very long story, right? But I think I'll be very, like, as short as I possibly can. Yeah, so I'm actually a Cal girl, very proudly so. My mom was in the Bengal cadre in Calcutta. So while, I mean, originally she was from, she's Punjabi and she grew up in Amritsar actually. But we moved to Cal because of her job, right? And,
Okay.
grew up in the districts in Bengal and then, of course, moved to Calcutta for a longer period in time. Went to the regular suspect school, which is Lamatnia, like was very proud, very school proud, etc. And Cal was amazing, 80s. It's such an amazing setup. It was one of the best, I think, childhoods I could have asked for, to be honest, because it's full of people who are extremely curious, very inquisitive, very much into sort of debating and quizzing. The quizzing was a pastime, right? Quizzing was like this extracurricular activity all of us were like passionate about and crazy about, right? And Bonvita quiz contest was like the echelon of things you could aspire to as a Calcuttan student, right? And there was a lot of drama, a lot of elocution, a lot of really like cool activities. But I think the one thing that I really hated about Cal was I think there's a lot of pressure academically, and I was a very, very terrible student. I remember, I mean,
Really?
I've
Wow.
shared this before. Yeah, I was a horrible student. I refused to give my plus 12 exam in accounts. I just refused to go. I didn't go. Like my ISC report card has like NA next to my accounts exam. I was extremely stubborn. I grew up like saying that I hated. I think I really. And I look back and I was, I think, pretty much traumatized by the academic environment because I just didn't relate to it. And sort of like cut forward like a few years from there, right? I mean, having the privilege to go to like one of the best business schools in the world on 2 scholarships,
Yep.
right? I mean, that I think is just, and I'm really loving the educational experience there, right? I think it just goes to show that I think we have so much more to do on the education system in India. I think there's so much opportunity to really have people like enjoy the education process. But equally, I think there's so much opportunity for people to know that there is no one right answer. So if you're not good at academics, you don't have like a future, right? It's not that at all. It just means that you will find your way as long as you're sort of determined, you're resilient, and you have ambition, right? So I think just wanted to call that out because I don't know how many folks who are watching are going through a similar sort of time in their lives when maybe what is traditionally successful is not playing out for them, but that's fine, right?
And exactly, I think it's a process, right? A lot of the times we want to just sort of achieve success as quickly as possible, but it's honestly, I believe success is not the destination. It is sort of the journey that you go through. And we were talking about this before we started over here. I don't know how many people know this, but you actually have an honors. You're a BA LLB honors. You're actually were a lawyer. You were starting to become a lawyer. So I guess the debating that we have, I had no idea that I was actually debating with someone who actually studied to debate, right? And then after you finished, law, you went on to join McKinsey. So it's a complete shift. So let's talk about that. What was the motivation behind at least attempting to become a lawyer? I'm guessing, and then switching over to the other side and becoming getting in a consulting company.
So, I think, AD, I think sometimes we sort of underestimate how lucky we've been in life, right? And I think I've had a few moments where I think I've been extremely lucky. So after law school, I had two offers. One was with McKinsey, which frankly for me, I didn't even know what the brand was. I didn't even know like about consulting. It wasn't like one of the dream jobs for me that I thought about when I thought about what I would do after law school. But I was just so compelled by frankly, they did a great sales pitch. And in fact, the people who came for that, for the sort of, the presentation, the RC presentation, as you call it, they were amazing because they talked about, I was really young then, right? And I was like told that I'd be sitting in front of CEOs and sort of solving business problems and, thinking about like how to grow companies and, also sort of work with foundations and with the government at scale, solving sort of really like large scale problems. And I was like, that's so exciting, right? And I had a backup offer with a law firm in London, a Magic Circle law firm in London, right? So I basically could defer that for a year. And I said, let me try this out. Let me see what this is about, right? So I think it was one of those leaps of faith. It just felt right. And I joined McKinsey and I was like, a year later, I had to tell the law firm that, hey, sorry, but I found I love what I do. I love solving problems. I don't as much like creating problems. So I think for me, business
If
is
there's
probably where it's going to be.
any advocate listening, I completely agree with her about creating problems. I think it's so important in many ways. I've always seen there's a big difference when someone after education goes and works for an MNC for a couple of years or 3 years and then goes back and tries to become an entrepreneur. I think, well, I have my own reasons why I think that is, but what was the impact, working with the McKinsey and then joining founding a startup? Was there an impact that it had?
Yeah, I think definitely, right, AD. I think, especially when I was at McKinsey, it was very formative. It was my only my first professional experience, right? Before that at law school, it was mainly internships. And I mean, of course, internships are great and I think they add tremendous value. But I think like when you're working in like a place which is really like, I think McKinsey is extremely performance focused, extremely
Absolutely.
outcome oriented, right? And there's a lot of respect for the people you work with and the people you work for, right? Which I think were values I took away. Right. So I think, when I look at what we're building at BabyChakra, I think the three and my team knows this. I mean, some of them might be on this and they will know this if I say this, right? But I keep on saying that I value your inputs, but I need your outcomes, right? So I
Yep.
think that's one thing I keep talking about. I never call my team or anyone in my team employees. And I'm very, very clear about that because it's one team and like, together we can make like magic happen. And I think the third thing I've learned is that there's no one right answer and there's no problem that's insurmountable. You just have to break it down and you have to go with an informed perspective on the approach, but don't get stuck in decision paralysis, right? Take a
Yep.
decision, stick with it, play it out, see and in pilots and see where that takes you to an answer, right? So I think these are the three things I sort of use every day post McKinsey in my life at work, I think.
I'm guessing also the experience, because McKinsey is so deep on research and trying to explain things through presentations, or at least, getting a lot of data and trying to make sense of it. And I've noticed that with your presentations as well, right? You're always trying to figure out, there's all this stuff happening at BabyChakra, but how can I explain it to you, right? It's such an important part of that storytelling aspect that most other entrepreneurs have a tough time talking about because they don't have that experience. So,
Yeah.
I completely agree with you that there is a lot of value there for,
Yeah. But Eddie, I think more than McKinsey, I think HBS is amazing in sort of really emphasizing this whole pattern analysis and sort of this ability to predict or at least attempt to predict trends, right? And to take a couple of counterintuitive bets, right? Because I think in McKinsey, whatever said and done, you're working with clients who've made certain bets, right? And you're working
True.
in helping them refine those bets further. I think at business school, there were so many sort of stories and so many conversations, as well as sort of, just the conversation with professors, right? And the emphasis constantly that if you want to create the future, you can't go down the same pathway people have taken because that is not creating the future, right? That's never going to lead to like disproportionate results. So I think that ability to really bet on myself, on my team, and people backing me to take a risk and to say the space may not be like fully there yet, but that's a space I sort of see trends and patterns emerging, which make it an exciting space to be in for the future. I think that courage and that insight actually was an HBS product, honestly.
Oh, wow. And you went there on a full scholarship, I believe.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, wow. Besides the point you made, anything else that you brought back from that experience of, being at HBS? Because I believe you also worked for a year before
Yeah.
you founded BabyChakra, right? So what was
Yeah.
that 3 or 4 years like, and the impact it's had on BabyChakra when you started and from there onwards?
The two things I always take away from HBS, apart from, of course, like the taking the counterintuitive bets, right? Going against sort of what is established norm to really to really create value, right? I think the other two things I took away from HBS is this whole aspect that it's really possible. And I just looked across the quality of talent in my class, right? In my section. And it just makes you so much more confident that, and I think in India, you sort of, and, growing up in an Indian education system, etc., you always like saying, oh, but they must know better, right? Because they've been in the West or they've been in like, now we talk about China, we talk about Southeast Asia, they must know better. But the reality is that it doesn't matter, right? I mean, no one really has the right answer. And it's about sort of you betting on yourself to find the right answer and the best answer at that point in time that sort of takes a journey forward that you're on, right? So I think that was one big key takeaway I took away, because there's no one who knows the answer, right?
Oh yeah, and there's never a right answer, right?
There's never a right answer. There's never a right answer. And the second thing I took away is that the different styles of leadership. Because again, I think HBS is very, very, they talk a lot about leadership and leadership styles. And I looked around my class, right? And I was in section I. And we had 80 people in my class, and everyone had a different style of speaking, of communicating, of thinking, right? And of leading, right? So the different styles of leaderships. And I think in India, again, growing up in an ecosystem where it was a very, if you're loud, if you're sort of very vocal, people sort of think you're a leader automatically, right? Versus like, I think just looking at different leadership styles. So now when I look at my team, I encourage them to find their own authentic leadership style versus sort of saying that there is one type of leadership style that you need to sort of think about.
That's the key thing, that as we get more virtual, I think we're still a far way from getting back to the same office and talk and meeting there. You're going to have a very distributed team. So you could have somebody sitting in Ahmedabad and one person sitting in Kolkata, a third person sitting in Dehradun, and all of them having a different perspective, and how to put that together, I think puts you in a very enviable position, because it is a bit of a challenge for a leader to have so many different leadership styles. But since you've been initiated to it, that definitely really helps. And I think that US style of education is so important there. So in fact, before we go to the next section, there's one question that was being asked is, how do you, I guess but how do you take such big risks?
So is he asking you that question? Is he asking me that question?
No, he's asking you that question. And let's talk about, how did you take such big risks? Part of that flow that we talked about, you could have had such a comfortable career, right? I mean, working for a consulting company like McKinsey and then going to HBS. I'm sure there was job offers up the wazoo, but and you could have had a comfortable life. You could have been in the US, probably making, $250,000 to $500,000 a year, and really be, really being satisfied, right? In so many ways. And you decided to come back to India, one of the toughest places for entrepreneurship in the world, and in such a tough market, because it's such a value conscious market in India. And you decide, no, I'm going to hack it out over here. I'm going to be this entrepreneur. And the opportunity cost is massive, right? Because if you think about even, a salary of $500,000 a year over 5 or 6 years, that's $3 million. Besides the fact, that you have to endure and work probably 3 times as hard and have so much responsibility. So that's a big risk, especially for someone who's, got the kind of background you do. What made you decide to find or start this movement called BabyChakra?
I'm someone who goes a lot by, I've always done what I wanted to do. There's no other way to describe it. And it just felt like the right thing to do. So I was sitting in business school in Boston. Then after that, I was working for a year in Boston, and my heart was like constantly in India. And I was reading up all the news in India. Whenever I'd come back, I'd see phones in the hands of, the lady who'd come home to help my mother. Like, she had a phone and she was constantly talking on it, and there was unlimited airtime. And, there were all these changes happening around me. And I was sitting in this very nice, sanitized atmosphere of like lovely Boston, which is really beautiful.
Oh yeah, gorgeous place.
Right?
Yeah.
All of that, right? And I was like, but I'm missing out on something. And, the more I thought about it, and I already had sort of my sister had become pregnant by then. And, she was going through this journey of making very tough choices for herself. And she's a very confident person, Adi. Like, she's one of the most confident, like, she's a corporate lawyer, extremely confident as an individual.
Oh, wow.
But I think her pregnancy basically made her realize just how vulnerable and also sort of open to, like, how less she knew. Right, about her own body, about her own self, about her journey as a pregnant mom, right? And she kept on talking to me on the phone. And, all of these changes were sort of coming together in a very interesting way for me. Also, McKinsey, I had worked in maternal and child health, right? So this area was of interest to me. And the idea was always about, how do I now come back to India and build something that could, one day, it was all dreams then, right? One day, and we were seeing this demographic shift in India, right? We were seeing the shift to nuclear families. We were seeing, and we were betting on there being sort of a data and digital sort of democracy, right? Because in the world, it's women and men. Like, women actually 51% of internet access versus 49% than men. But in India, it's completely, skewed. It's 70-30 men to women, right? So there was a bet that, one day women would have access to the internet, and one day women would have equal access to devices, right? And when they come online, the paradigm of the internet as we knew it, which is Internet 1.0, which has been created by men and consumed by men, will shift to being created by women and consumed by women, right? And that was the part of the movement I really wanted to be part of, right? And when women come on, they want to be in a place which is safe, which is critical for them, which helps them as a companion, does not judge them, and is relevant to them in their journey, right? And I think that the entire sort of, I couldn't sleep at night. Like, the last couple of months, I couldn't sleep at night because I was just so taken in by just the opportunity we had to make something which would really be a solution and be of impact, right, at scale and families in India. So I told my husband, I was like, Sandeep, we're moving back.
Yeah.
And we moved back.
And it's, you put it so well. I think when you have that kind of a burning desire, right, nothing makes sense, right? No amount of salary, no amount of perks, no amount of everything else can really make up until you solve that problem. And I can see that because, we've had ups and downs, right? We've had amazing times at Baby Chakra. There's been tough times. And unless and until you've got that burning desire that is the driving force behind, everything, it's very easy to quit, right? It's only the person who has a burning desire that sort of stays the course and will keep plying to find the answer. But so you come back, you now it's now 2015. You've decided you're going to do this thing called Baby Chakra, and you go to Mumbai Angels and you meet, I guess, somebody you knew at McKinsey and somebody I have known for almost 30 years, right? Karan Maheshwari, right? And I believe you raised a round from Mumbai Angels and then Round Glass and then Equanimity. So let's talk about, what was it like to go back and find Karan, convincing him to invest. And then you got Ariant as well, right? Another great investor who's been a great supporter, very, very passionate about your platform. And so what was it like raising that first round of capital?
So I have to say, I think Karan's been a great ally. And I think that's it's how all these circles of life that come together. And I was talking to you before this call as well, like how you sort of meet people in your journey along the way and somehow they just play different roles and very unanticipated roles, right, in your journey. And so when I came back to India, I obviously I didn't know anyone in the venture or the fund, in the angel ecosystem, right? And Karan, I was talking to Karan one day, he was like, but you know I'm an angel investor, right? And I was like, I didn't know that. So it was literally that conversation that sparked this off. And he was like, I'm part of this consortium called Mumbai Angels. And I was like, of course I know about Mumbai Angels because you guys have funded InMobi. Naveen was ex-McKinsey and, all of this other stuff. So I said, sounds amazing. So do you think, what do I do? Do I go pitch to Mumbai Angels? What do I do? And he was like, do you have a business plan? Do you have a projections ready? Do you have everything in place? I was like, well, I'll get it done because I know how to I would like to think I know how to do some of that. And that's it. I went to Karan. He was really excited by the concept. He's actually been a big believer in the potential of the whole mom-baby ecosystem in India. And I think the fact that it's waiting to be number one, there has to be a better solution. And I think we're inching towards getting there. And I think the second piece that it's a very, very large market that's just waiting for a brand to emerge that stands for credibility and trust and companionship, right, through the journey that parents go through. And I think he's always been a big believer of Baby Chakra being that brand. So he made the introductions. I remember actually doing a bunch of pitches around the country with Mumbai Angels, Delhi Angels. I don't know, when Bangalore did that. Anil Joshi was the other person I met at the Mumbai Angels. Anil was there and he was extremely helpful. So so I think that was really how the journey started.
In fact, there is a part of my portfolio called the Anil Joshi portfolio, and that is just a subset that has done so well as an overall portfolio. But then obviously your next round, and it was an amazing round. You raised money from Round Glass, right, in 2016. And they're not your traditional VC. They're a bit of a different kind of a VC, but they do write a significant check. What was the conversation there? How did you find them? Did they find you? And what did it take to convince? Because it's a different thing when you're convincing a bunch of angels, and you get someone like a Round Glass who's willing to back you and back you for a long time. What was the difference in the conversation when you went to Round Glass versus raising money from Mumbai Angels?
So it was in December that Round Glass connected with me, and I was actually, at that point in time, we'd taken a 1-week break. My husband and I remember getting a mail in my inbox, actually a message first from another portfolio company founder saying, hey, would you want to meet Atin, who was the investment director? He's really keen to meet you. And, they're looking at an investment in the company. So my take was, we're not really looking for investments right now, but happy to talk and know more about the fund, etc. And so, when I came back to Mumbai after my vacation, Atin, Marcus and I met up. Marcus is now sort of the country manager at Thrive India, but he was earlier at Round Glass, amazing guy again. And, they laid out the vision for me, which was on how they were investing in health and wellness digital platforms in India and the US. And they laid out a bunch of the other portfolio companies. And it just sounded amazing. I think it was a very resonant theme in terms of how do you create impact using digital and sort of using and leveraging sort of health tech to really create impact. And, while we weren't there yet as a platform, to be very honest, that was always the aspiration, right? How do you build in the healthcare ecosystem into creating a complete solution and an ecosystem to care for your families, right? So I think that resonated very strongly. We had another term sheet then from another amazing investor But I think this whole focus on health, I think that really swung the balance for us.
And they've been a great partner. I met Atin also a few times. Hung out for lunch because he was close to my office. The way they thought about Baby Chakra, there was such a big idea, or they saw that as such a big vital cog in their wheel. And obviously, the community you were building has so much trust, very rare to find, especially in India, an online community where people don't know each other. To have that kind of trust was very rare. But then obviously you went on and you raised money from Equanimity. But I think somewhere in between, something very interesting happened. You primarily were an English platform, right? And then you did something interesting. I remember the email that you sent to investors like, hey, listen, we're suddenly blowing up and we've just figured out why. So let's talk about that, for a minute. I know, we're already getting pinged that we're spending too much time on things, but such an important thing to experiment and the one that you did. Maybe you could just talk about how suddenly overnight you guys saw this massive surge in viewership and in engagement.
Honestly, AD, I'm a very firm believer of also listening and following the consumer. I think every entrepreneur does that. And in this case, again, it was a bit of a no-brainer, right? Because we actually had mothers and also fathers come onto our platform. And, we had voice to text enabled because we realized a lot of people were, using voice to text a lot. And we were seeing a lot of Hinglish questions or Tamilish questions sort of play out, right? And, we were like, this is such a big need. Right? And why are we sort of compromising the experience by making it a pure English platform? And, the vision was always to be a companion to every family in India. So it was a natural progression, natural trajectory. But it just felt like we just saw we have these bar charts which basically say questions asked in English, questions asked in Hinglish, questions asked in Tamilish, right? And we suddenly saw this big spurt and we were like, wait, this is the time. So, the good thing about us, honestly, AD, is that we have about 90% of our content on our platform generated by users, right? So it's like for us to launch a new language is a matter of maybe 5 days because it's a back-end switch. It's basically seeding and translating some of our more sort of guided pieces of content, which are more which sort of feed into the personalized experience and are more sort of backed by experts, etc., in the care protocol and the journeys. But the balance is all pretty much created by users once they come on or by the doctors once they're on the platform. So I think for us to actually launch new languages is very, very friction-free. And we did that and it just blew up for us. I think you remember that moment.
Yeah, I know. It was just like, wow, we finally that inflection point, right? We talked about this subset, right? That female founder and a solo founder, right? How has that experience been? Because we've invested a lot of female founders, right? But typically it's been a team, and usually not just because they're a female, but usually most of our investments have been into teams. So there's at least 2 or 3 founders, and we were doing an analysis for Women's Day the other day, and almost 40% of our portfolio has a woman founder, right? So almost 3 or 4 times higher than the global average. But you've been the unique one that you're actually a solo female founder, right? And you and I think Shivani is the other one from Tala, the 2 solo female founders in our portfolio. Has there been any challenges? Have you felt that being a solo founder and then also being a solo female founder has sort of worked for you, against you?
I think it's broadly worked a lot for me because the bond that I would like to think I know I have with my team is a lot stronger, right? And I think the ability for me to basically constantly also build sort of a lot of trust base and therefore a lot of insight-based relationships with people outside my team, with other fellow entrepreneurs or with investors I really trust the judgment of. I think that has really accelerated my own learning. I do think, and I think the second piece is just the ability to take decisions much faster, right? I can take decisions much faster because the only bottleneck in making that decision is me and the data that backs the decision, right? There is no other bottleneck per se. So I do think that we're able to be a lot more agile. We're able to be a lot more we're able to sort of get a lot more opinions and get a lot more buy-in and a lot more ownership and leadership within the team because I'm a single founder and because I end up saying that I'm not the only leader. I mean, all of you are partners in helping me build this out. So I think it's definitely worked a lot better for me.
No, that's a very interesting perspective, obviously, because now there's not 2 people to answer to, there's only 1, and therefore you can empower a lot more people. Yeah.
I mean, it does get lonely sometimes, Adi. I'm not going to deny that. I mean, of course, there are times when you're going through some really tough moments as a founder. And you do wish, and fortunately I do have those people in my team that I can actually have a very open conversation with. So I don't miss it as much. But in the early days I did, because we were still forming our team, we were still coming together, we were still trying to figure out what the journey for us would be. And at that point in time I felt that what I need to do as a leader is to like sort of camouflage them and sort of be like the duck above water and my feet paddling below. But now I'm realizing that everyone's feeling the ripples one way or the other. So let's all sort of swim together in this pond.
That's a good way to put it. That's an amazing way to put it, actually. So let's talk about this fuel. What's the fuel driving Naiyya, right? I mean, most people don't know this, and that you weren't actually a parent at the time you started BabyChakra, right? And so this wasn't something that you were saying, this is my personal issue, and therefore I want to do this, but you decided to open a parenting platform regardless, right? And so what was sort of the motivation to do that, right? And how would you understand your target segment, especially when you were not a mother or a parent for that matter, right? So
it's a very classic sort of entrepreneur story, right? I mean, you don't see, ideally, of course, the best case is if you're facing the problem yourself because you personally relate to it. And I have to say, after I became a mother, Adi, I think I've started relating a lot more to some of the journeys that we've built out on the app. And I think I relate a lot more to some of the solutions we're sort of working towards, right? But even before that, I pretty much let the consumers and the mothers sort of guide me. And I spent a lot of time talking to mothers, and I've said this in a few other sort of conversations before. I've probably had about 600 coffee chats / sort of calls / sort of, I don't know, all sorts of like meetups, etc. with moms to just understand the pain points before we even wrote the first, I even sort of designed like the layout and we wrote the first line of code for BabyChakra, right? So I think I spent a lot of time connecting with mothers just to understand what the pain points were and how we could solve them. The other context, of course, is that McKinsey, I was working in the maternal, I was working in healthcare, and I ended up working for about almost a year and a half, 2 years in the whole MCH, maternal and child health space. And I sort of, seen the solutions and understood the ecosystem around MCH quite well by then. And it was a really exciting problem to solve. So it was a problem that had kept me awake at nights at McKinsey. It kept me awake at nights. And today it still does, like building BabyChakra. I think it's a really, really exciting problem to solve, which is how do you ensure that a mother today is empowered and can make the best choices she can through a very critical journey in her life, right? That of pregnancy, that of motherhood. And for the first time where she's responsible not just for herself, but for someone else. So I think it's a very exciting place that we are in. It's really what just keeps you awake and keeps you talking to consumers and learning from them.
And then interestingly, when your startup was in its teenage years, right, third and fourth year of, when it starts giving all the issues that it could, you became a parent, right? And again, we go back to the fact that you already had a company that was surging at that point, right? It's been surging ever since. But it's in those teenage years when it just seems like everything's falling apart and everything's coming back together at the same time, right? After you became a parent, has that changed your outlook or the way you look at BabyChakra now, and even maybe at the way you look at entrepreneurship? Have you seen a change because of the whole experience of becoming a mother? I think baby A is now 18 months old, right?
I think there are two things I took away from that experience, Adi. First is that when you're pregnant, you're actually, I've also always been a very confident, very empowered, and I think very independent person, right? And I think for the first time when I became pregnant, Adi, I was concerned about whether there would be an impact on the company, whether my team would react, how my team would react, how my investors would react. We were in a conversation, a fundraising conversation at that point in time, and a couple of them actually. And in fact, I was worried. I didn't know what would happen because I'd read all these stories about women finding a setback to their professional aspirations during pregnancy, right? And these are real stories, and I see them play out today. I was very fortunate. I think for the most part, I just got amazing support, and I think absolutely no difference in any sort of approach from my team. And my team actually celebrated the journey and the milestones with me. My existing set of investors were amazing. We've had board meetings where, they've discussed, and I think Arihan, for instance, after baby was born, he sent me this massive sort of hamper for the baby and, congratulated me and all of the cool stuff. Everyone really was very, very supportive. So I think one thing I took away from a personal, professional perspective was, sometimes these thoughts and these things that hold you back are perhaps in your head, perhaps they happen with people around you, but you have to move forward and find the right people who back you through, times which are empowering and times which traditionally might seem where you need to take a step back, but you don't feel that it's a time for you to, right? So
Yeah.
you find
So
people,
true.
you
And
find good
such
people.
true words. I mean, so many times all the things you worry about, 99.98% of them never happen, right? So
Yeah.
and you heard someone talk about someone that something happened to someone, and then we sort of don't do anything because we're paralyzed by what happened to somebody we don't even know, and we don't even know if it's a verified story, right? And like you said, but if you, it's only when you experience it, you're like, oh wow, you know what was really holding me back, right? Why was I getting held back?
But
And
it is real, huh? It is real. So, I mean, we have so many mothers in Baby Chakra who share very openly the experience of either being discriminated at work. I mean, even when they get married, people ask them, like, so when do you plan to have a family in a job
yeah,
interview? And that's illegal. I mean, it's not right. But people get asked these questions that women have this additional piece of hurdle that they have to run across, and they must. And I think what I want every mother to on Baby Chakra to know is that there is a community of other parents who support you run that race, right? So you're not alone. And I think that's, again, another thing that changed my approach to what we were building out of Baby Chakra, right? Because, of course, we're building out a companionship that was initially based a lot on data and insights and sort of, looking at the algos and where, like, we were seeing better retention cohorts, etc. I think it became a lot more personal after having baby.
no, I completely agree. So you know what? I think we've got roughly about another 15 minutes to go. Last question from my side, and we get into the rapid fire part, right? But I think while we're talking about super moms, we're talking about the fact that that it's stuff. I also noticed that it's also sometimes stuff for super dads. What I would say, or super parents, right? That when you're trying to have a startup and a baby, right? It is difficult, and it seems sometimes you have to make a decision for either or, right? But you, and even, I mean, for that matter, even Sandeep, right? I know he's heading HD, and he's in a sort of a entrepreneurial kind of role or entrepreneurial kind of role. What is it like, right? What are some of the tips you would give to maybe a super mom or a super dad or someone who's thinking about, can I do both, right? What's the kind of tips you would give them in managing two babies, right? And one of them a
So
teenager
I'll
and
say
one of
that
them.
first I'll say that there is no super mom or super dad. These are all notional sort of, nomenclatures, because honestly, I don't think anyone, I mean, like, I certainly will not be an aspiration of a super mom to anyone, I would hope. But I think, like, I mean, do what you think is right for you in the circumstances you're in, and do what you think you want to do. For me, it was very clear. Like, I'm a very ambitious person. I'm extremely passionate about what I'm building out. I think there's massive opportunity for impact and for value creation here. And I'm just obsessed with this journey, right? So for me, that's really what keeps me happy and going. And I think, the part of me that's a mom, I know that Arya will be happy if she has a happy mom, if she has a content mom, if she has a mom who's fulfilling her passion, her desires. I will be a happier person with her, right? I think it's the same with Sandeep. I know he's driven in his own way. So I think that's really, I think, stay true to who you are. And, of course, I think in a family, there's always, like, quality time you have to spend to be with your child, to make time for them, because they need their parents as well. And how you carve it
Very true.
out, I think you just become better at time management. I think as once you become a parent, and especially as an entrepreneur, you anyways have to be careful about your time, because that's the only resource, that's the most precious resource you have. But I
So
think it
true. So
makes you
true.
a lot more guarded and a lot more careful about your
Has Arya made it to a couple of board meetings so far? Like, have you
time.
taken it? Like,
Not
what do
yet.
you
I mean, like,
think?
she's actually, yeah, we've done a couple of virtual ones from home, and she's kind of walked in and said, Mama. And I'm like, well, not right now. I don't think now's the time.
Maybe you could use it as a tie vote. Like, okay, Arya, you got to decide now. There's three
She
here, three
wins.
there.
She wins.
There's a lot of questions, and I'll take them at the end. So if there is anybody that wants to ask more questions of this amazing entrepreneur we have, please put them in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to take them out on. But the next thing we're going to do, and Naiyya, is this thing we call rapid fire. What the concept is very simple. I'm going to ask you a question. Just whatever first comes to mind, you answer it. Maybe it could spark another conversation, and we'll probably have to forget about the remaining questions altogether. But it's been fun. I think we found out some very interesting stuff about people who've been on the show, and hopefully you'll enjoy it too. But you don't have time. You have to answer right away. All right? Is that
Okay.
fair?
Okay.
Cool. So we'll get started. The first question is, what is the one thing that you are obsessed with right now?
Baby Chakra.
Baby Chakra. Okay, good one. What do you know now that you wish you would have known earlier?
one word, or can I just give a phrase?
Phrase, yeah. It doesn't have to be a word. It's a phrase, yeah. Go ahead.
There are no shortcuts to success.
Wow, that's a good one. No shortcuts. And this is the Peter Thiel question. One thing that you know to be true, but very few people agree with you on it.
That there is no right answer.
I think most people would agree on that, actually. At least I
Are you
do.
surprised? There's so many conversations I have with people that no, this is the way it's done. It's always been done. And we're like, well, I don't know about
You should
that.
make them watch that movie Vantage Point, you know. One piece of advice that you received that you still follow.
Stay true to yourself and never give up.
What keeps you up at night?
Baby Chakra.
Baby Chakra.
I'm telling you.
Maybe baby Arya at this point. Your
Arya
biggest
used to keep me awake like in the first couple of months. Now she's a decent sleeper, so I'm sorted.
your biggest advice to founders about fundraising.
It's the quality of capital versus the quantity of capital that counts.
So true, actually. You know, I think so many times people run behind the higher valuation and don't realize that if you don't have the right person on board as an investor, it doesn't matter how much capital they bring in, right? It's how they can multiply that capital that matters. In order of importance to you, okay? Team, founder, customers, investors.
Customer, team, founder, investor.
Okay,
I have
cool.
to say.
Actually, for your platform, it makes sense that the customer is first, right? It makes a lot because obviously all these conversations are between customers and you're just acting as a support. If an investor can provide one value to you besides the money, what would it be?
Being able to maintain a sense of support and equanimity through the ups and downs. I've seen in some of the best investors, when the chips are down, they actually seek you out more actively. And they're the best investors because the entrepreneurs will never forget when they were there for them when the chips were down, because every person is there when everything is going hunky-dory. But it's those investors who are very special who are there for you when the chips are down. They seek you out actively, which is quite special.
Yeah, I think especially if you're not there for the entrepreneur when they're down, and you know, I think an entrepreneur will always have multiple stories, right? I mean, if this doesn't work out, he'll do another venture, but he'll never come back to you if you weren't there for him when you were down. So true. So true. If you could pick the brain of one person for 24 hours, ask them anything you ever wanted, right?
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. There we go. Okay. Would you ask him about his tweets or anything else?
I mean, about everything. Like, I don't even know what Baby X does these days. Like, I mean, there's just so much to ask him.
And I know you're an avid blog follower. So let's talk about a blog that you just started following.
So I haven't been following blogs, but I read a lot of posts which I get routed through to Twitter. And I mean, right now I've just been following all the sort of demos on GPT-3, and they're just fascinating. I can't wait to sort of read more and hear more and try it out. I've applied for the early access, not yet gotten it. So here's a shout out to anyone at OpenAI, like OpenAI, if they can give me access and I can try it out for a bit. But yeah, I mean, just obsessed with that. I think it's really a game changing. But like, I think it's a pathway to the future. It's game changing.
I think that pretty much does rapid fire for us. Wow, we actually got a chance to finish all 11 questions. It's very, very rare. Thank you so much, Naiyya. So we've got a couple of questions here. Let me see. What one has an idea or vision, not only a fully developed product, and one wants to work on it because the idea's got potential. What should be the next move? Should he or she wait to get the product known before they approach an angel investor? So I guess the question, if in a simpler sense, could be that, you know, should you wait till you have an investor on board before you start working on the idea or vision, or is, you know, which comes first?
No, obviously the idea of vision is frankly nothing without the execution, right? And unless you're, of course, like a third-time entrepreneur who's been super successful, or second-time sort of super successful founder, right? And people start backing you because it's you. I think as a first generation, first-time entrepreneur, you have to prove a certain amount of traction and to prove sort of a use case for what you were setting out to build. And when you take the traction and the proof point of success, I think you'll find, I mean, a lot of the investors are a lot more open to listening to you, to finding you more credible, and to backing you. AD, I mean, so you should be the one answering this, I think.
I think because it comes from an investor, there's always a bias, right? But listening to the founder saying, listen, it's so true that I think sometimes people think about raising money before they think about raising what I would call customer capital. Like if you've got customer capital on your side, venture capital will run behind you, right? And in fact, I learned this word customer capital from two Calcutta-based entrepreneurs, right? The guys from Wow Momos, right? Like I mean, think about them, 40 restaurants without ever raising a single rupee of capital. And they called it, no, we did raise capital. It's called customer capital, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference, that when you've got that confidence of customer capital, venture capital will run behind you. Yeah, so there's one question from Devian Patel. How is BabyChakra planning to target tier 3 cities for distribution of its products?
So we already have a lot of mothers and fathers actually coming from tier 3 cities. So they are already aware of BabyChakra products. So in terms of distribution, we have our own platform where we're sort of integrated with a bunch of logistics players who distribute and sort of, basically ensure that the product reaches the customers in those cities. Plus, we are listed on Flipkart and Amazon, and they have a very sort of strong network on the logistics side. So that's really how we're thinking about distributing our products right now. There's a lot of word of mouth that's spread in tier 3 cities actually, because, we have mothers there, we have doctors there. They're loving our products. So they talk about it constantly in their groups, and we get a lot of actually inbound WhatsApp requests and also chat requests on our BabyChakra app saying कि आप क्या कभी showroom खोलोगे BabyChakra का हमारे town में, and it's very interesting because like we literally just have 3 products right now, AD. I mean, we don't have any more products, just 3 products. But I think there's a lot of excitement about the brand and about the credibility and the fact that we're extremely, extremely quality conscious in terms of what we launched. So I think there's a lot of excitement around it.
Devin, hopefully that answers your question. This is the last question we'll take because I know we're just about to get that 2-minute timer coming on. So this is from Abhishek Anand. There are often entrepreneurs who stay bootstrapped to avoid investor pressure. What's your advice to them?
I would say to each her or his own. I mean, there are amazing companies that are built both ways. And I think it depends on the trajectory you want your company to take and whether your company needs that trajectory to be successful and to be valuable. So I would say it totally depends on you as a founder, if you feel that the investors will put pressure and you'd rather not have that, then I think you could make that choice yourself. But you'd also find great investors who are actually more of partners, more of allies in your journey with you. And in fact, they sort of help reduce the pressure that you face as an entrepreneur. So I think it's both ways. I think it totally depends on you, your business requirements, the acceleration. I mean, investors do definitely require a rate of acceleration in your business, right? So if your business is one that, is prone to natural acceleration and requires, financial acceleration, then I think venture capital might be for you. But if it doesn't, then why do something unnatural to it?
Yeah, so true. Don't invite someone to your party if you don't need them, right?
Yeah.
So great answer. So Naiyya, I think it's been such an enlightening session. I think talking about your journey, starting from Calcutta and then obviously going across the world and then coming back, starting a company, becoming a mother during the journey of your company. I think it's such an amazing story. I think you should write a book one day. Is that in the plans at some point?
Not right now, AD. I mean, there is no time for books. I think it's time to just work and to make something and to prove, build something of value, really, right? I mean, this is the time now. We can write about books later.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Any final thoughts? I think we've got about 25 seconds before we get cut off.
No, thanks, Adi. Thanks for sort of helping me through the glitches, and it was amazing talking to you. And you've been an amazing partner in this journey. You know that. So yeah, always a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Naiyya. Have a good night. I'll let you go back to baby and let her get her phone back, and
Awesome.
we'll talk again very soon. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Look forward to it. Take care.
Bye, everybody. Good night.